Hey, it's Carlyn here, all on my own this time. And I hope you enjoy this journey I'm about to take you on. I just turned 50 recently, and I've been reflective of the different roles I've been embracing, the roles I've been unbecoming, and the ones I'm becoming. And if you've been listening to me for any length of time, you know that I'm the type of thinker who thinks in these sort of broad, explosive spirals and never in sort of one distinct silo. So, as I was planning the things I wanted to share with you in this episode, I thought, oh man, this should probably be 3 different episodes. But alas, it is not, because I can't help but bring all these things together. And I think you'll enjoy that as well. At least I hope you will. I'm going to talk about the teaching I've been doing through the universities. I'm teaching a module at the University of Alberta on entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial thinking and creating possibility for problem solving and solutioning for others while creating work that's really meaningful for ourselves. I'm going to share a little bit about that with you, as well as an opportunity that you could get in on some of that too. So stay tuned for that. I'll be talking about how I'm embracing 50 and all of these shifts and changes and uncertainty and embracing my inner crone and what that means. And I think there's a lot about our cultural shifts and value of women and generativity and fertility and productivity and what that looks like as we shift into this second half of life and how I'd like to be in that time. And I'll be talking about some of the great conversations we've been having in Activate Vitality on some of these themes around becoming our most authentic selves, working in ways that fit us in our changing lives and roles, and the unbecoming of what you were trained to be as you become more authentically you. I honor this moment where I can acknowledge that I'm recording here in Calgary, which sits on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, the Kainai, the Piikani nations, as well as the Tsuut'ina Nation and Stoney Nakoda nations of Bearspaw, Chiniki, and Wesley. This land is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. In Blackfoot, this place is called Mokinstis, which is a reference to the Elbow in the Elbow River. I share this with you not as a formality, but because today's episode is partly about questioning the structures and systems we've inherited without examining them, and that has to include colonial ones. The land I live and work on carries history that deserves more than a quick sentence, and I'm still learning what it means to sit with that honestly. You're listening to the Brave OT podcast with me, Carlyn Neek. This podcast is all about empowering occupational therapists to step up, level up, blaze some trails, and maybe engage in a little conscious rebellion in service of our profession, our clients, our work, our businesses, and living our mission wholeheartedly. We are all about keeping it real, doing hard things, unhustling, being curious, exploring, growing through our challenges, and finding joy, fulfillment, and vitality as we do so. Really, we're OTing ourselves and each other. I hope you love this episode. So I'm releasing this toward the end of April, and I turned 50 on April 1st. No joke. As my 50th birthday was coming, I didn't feel that sense of dread. I know growing up hearing women, 49 forever or 39 forever, or don't ask a woman her age. And I proudly have been sharing that I'm turning 50. I feel very grateful to have the health I do at 50, and I'm working on improving that. I'm grateful to have the career I do at 50, and it's an honor to be here. I've lost family members too young, and my dad died at 59. That's only 9 years from where I am now. And I really want to embrace with gratitude being 50 and being any age, really. We celebrated by having loads of friends and family into a local cafe where we brought in a musician who we've all enjoyed listening to since I was 18. And so it's fun to bring together people from different parts of my life and different stages of my life and music that's been there throughout my life and really just celebrate that in one room together. One of the questions that I often get people to reflect on with my clients that I either my coaching clients or my OT clients is about if you were at your 90th birthday or your retirement party and you've lived your life authentically, what do you hope people will be able to say about the way you lived your life? And this is a values question. It really gets people thinking about living in alignment, living authentically, and if they're showing up as their most authentic self, what would other people see in their actions? And this is the basis for so much of the work I do with people to find the occupations, to find the actions that really support them in that full expression of who they are. I do this in my mental health practice and with the OTs that I coach in my coaching program. So I had this neat opportunity to have my husband and sons both all say some things at the party, and they spoke about the way I prioritize family and our individual relationships, pointing to some closeness my eldest son and I have found on our travel recently and the conversations we have while we're traveling and exploring. And my youngest also shared about travel, but also how us working together through his diabetes has been very meaningful for him, and he had a lot of great gratitude. And they spoke about my career and how passionate I am about my work and how that's inspired them. And oh, wow, like those are really, really meaningful things to have reflected back, that they're seeing those things in how I conduct myself and how I show up in their lives. So that felt really good. And I've also had some feelings of being a little bit disoriented in the process. And it's role transition, really. My sons are 20 and 17, and the 17-year-old is about to transition out of diabetes care at the Children's Hospital, which is really super supportive, and transition into adult care. He is graduating from high school, and it's the same high school, like same school both of my kids went to since kindergarten. So we've been a part of that community for a very long time, and leaving our hockey community. And it feels like a lot of transitions out of supportive communities that we've been in and part of, and important roles. And both kids live here in our home. Like they're going to university locally. They'll be living here for years to come. So it's not about saying goodbye, but it is a role transition. And they need me a lot less day to day. So I've been joking that I'm in my get a life era, that I need to find other roles and other things to do. But thanks to menopause, perimenopause, wherever the heck I am on that journey, I am tired. It is hard to find new things to do. I feel quite introverted a lot of the time, and just not a lot of like oomph to get up and go do the things or reach out to the people or that sort of thing. So in these role transitions, I see myself needing to do more reaching out, because a lot of school things and hockey things mean that I just keep showing up in all the places and the people are there and we build connection that way. But I'm going to need to be a little bit more intentional about that as I transition. So thinking about that, but also in this Crone era, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what I mean about the Crone in a moment. There comes also a strengthening of boundaries and resistance to pleasing. And so those feel a little bit in contrast to the super social person I was, let's say 10 or 15 years ago, where I needed my community in order to get through all of these years of parenting and working and all of the things. And so there's a push-pull. And all of these things can be true at once. It's not that one needs to resolve and end up on one side or the other, but I'm acknowledging the presence of these pushes and pulls. And this all ties in with my career as an entrepreneur, as an educator and mentor of other entrepreneurs, in boundaries and intentionality and checking in on what we have been to date and what we are intending to be as we evolve and grow. So let's get into this Crone thing. I went to a beautiful event in the fall or early winter, and this woman, local woman, her name's Jillian White, and she has some beautiful offerings at jillian-white.com. She's local and hosts a lot of things around spirituality and the divine feminine and weaving in soul magic and connecting to community and your most authentic self in a really soulful and spiritual way. So I've been watching her from afar and sometimes a little closer for years, but she was putting on this event that was about creating your Crone doll with needle felting. And so I made mine, if you could see this on video, I'm posting these podcasts on YouTube as well. And so I'll make sure the video version goes up. But this is the Crone doll I created that day, that weekend. I think we went 2 days. And it was my first time needle felting, and that was really fun. And just being around women who are embracing this transition of age. And I'm going to read from some of the words that she shared with us. She shared so many beautiful words, and I share some snippets with you. She says that women have always carried 3 great archetypes within them: maiden, mother, and crone. The maiden is the spark. The mother is the flame. The crone is the glowing ember, steady, ancient, and alive. And in our culture, the crone is one of the most feared, misunderstood, and erased. We live in a world that worships youth and productivity, a world that tells women their worth is tied to beauty, fertility, and service. So when a woman enters the season of perimenopause and menopause, she's often told subtly or loudly that she's fading. But the truth is the opposite. The crone is not fading, she's deepening. She's a woman who no longer bleeds for others, but instead bleeds energy into her own truth. She is the one who stops people pleasing and stops shrinking and starts speaking from the marrow. This is why patriarchal systems have always feared her, not because she's weak, but because she's uncontrollable. An older woman cannot be easily silenced. She knows who she is. She sees through power games. She understands cycles. She carries memory. She has survived enough to trust her own knowing. And so society learned to caricature her, wrinkled, wicked, dangerous, invisible. Because a woman rooted in her power is dangerous to systems that depend on her self-doubt. But here's the sacred truth. The crone is not the end. She is the threshold. Jillian goes on and has so much to share. Attending this event in the early winter was really powerful because these were things I was feeling. These were things that I was embracing, and it was beautiful to be in a circle of women. Do check out Jillian's offerings along these lines or others. So as I turned 50 in April, on April 1st, I thought about invoking my crone. And not that she just showed up. She has been brewing all along. And I've been feeling her. And I've been feeling her as this sense of a mentor and an educator and a community member. I think about Indigenous cultures where the wise woman is the advisor and the community support, the grandmothers that hold all this knowledge and wisdom. And I've been really embracing the roles where I get to share that wisdom through my Activate Vitality program and coaching other OT business owners, and through recent opportunities I've had the last couple of years to teach. So let's get into those. I've so appreciated our OT training as I've built my business and shifted my business over the years. It's powerful. And our way of thinking really wires us to think expansively and explore through this lens of seeing people in context, seeing people in their values and their interests and their passions, and then facilitating their engagement in those passions, facing any sorts of obstacles that might show up, obstacles within them, obstacles that they come with, using their strengths and expressing that in the context of the environments that may be facilitating and limiting in many different ways, and through other ways of engaging these occupations. And so I love that. And I think that's so fundamental in how I see the world. And something I've noticed in the OTs that I talk to who are struggling is more in that sort of institutional environment, the impact of the institutional environment for people. There's that sort of clinical mindset that I hear a lot, really evidence-based, protocol-driven, and do it right or don't do it. And this is excellent for care. And this is excellent for her big systems. And it's also a little bit, can feel limiting, can limit our possibilities or limit our ability to engage in doing the right thing, because so much of what we do exists outside of those exact frameworks. And I find for the most part, we navigate that. But where we can get really stuck is in that sort of very contained way of thinking and being and working. I find a lot of OTs by the nature really of it being a hard program to get into, tend to be achievers. maybe that can slide into perfectionism when the going gets tough. And many of our educational systems teach us to be this way, right? And how do we get the highest marks? We have to learn how to really play the game in order to get near perfect marks. They're required to do these things. And so I see that showing up in practice as a lot of OTs really exhausting themselves by over preparing, by seeking a lot of extra certifications to justify that they can do this, by over planning sessions where that can sometimes really work against us, not only in putting in a lot of hours of work, but also in sticking to a plan that might not be the right plan for that client that day because we're really attached to all this time we spent planning and aren't really responding to what's showing up in the room that day with the clients. What I really want to inspire my students and the OTs that I support is to really expand into the not knowing and the power of the not knowing. This comes with a certain amount of trust that we will be able to respond in the moment and identify and co create a really good plan. But truly leaning into the not knowing when we walk, whether it's walking into a session where, okay, I know what we're overall working on, I know what the big goals we're working toward are. But if I walk in with an openness to that client's experience, I'm more likely to be able to co-create an intervention that's meaningful or a way of working together that day that's meaningful. Or maybe we're going to adjust some of those goals because we know a little bit more together now as we've explored this in a certain way. So this comes back to trusting our own frameworks for thinking and detaching from the role as expert advisor, but more so responsive co-creator. And this doesn't mean we're dropping expertise or advising, but really creating more client centeredness and effectiveness in the way of working. So that's on that clinical side. On the entrepreneurial side, think about the students and the OTs I coach, and the not knowing leads us to more robust businesses. And so I teach the occupational therapy students through the entrepreneurship course to really embrace an entrepreneurial mindset or entrepreneurial thinking by going out and looking for gaps and challenges. So, not starting with, hey, I have an idea of a product that I want to build, but rather actually going out first and looking at what's out there. What isn't working? What are some ways that some occupational therapy thinking could come in and create some interesting solutions? And go in with an openness to really research that, research the experience of the people who are impacted, research the systems around and the environment and the context, and understand that rather than going in with, hey, I've got a plan for you. Why don't I just create this thing? Or just creating it and then wondering why people aren't all that interested. So, this is a framework that isn't new. This is the scientific process. This is the entrepreneurial mindset. This is entrepreneurial thinking. I see it everywhere. In fact, we went to my son's university orientation the other day. It wasn't orientation, it was a big open intro day. But they were talking about entrepreneurial thinking in every faculty. Every building we went through, there was a giant banner that said, start something. This is at the University of Calgary, not the same university I'm teaching at. I'm teaching at the University of Alberta in this module. But I really loved the way they were embracing this entrepreneurial thinking as an umbrella, as really it's innovation. It's bringing this way of identifying problems and being willing to innovate and create solutions in all disciplines. And I think it was really, really exciting to see that. And so when I'm teaching my entrepreneurship module, it's really about innovation. It's not necessarily about starting a private practice. And so this process of identifying challenges, looking for ways you might offer solutions, understanding the challenges from the people who are experiencing them, and being willing to experiment with a draft and another draft and try it out and gain some feedback and keep going, which means we have to be really open to what we might have thought in a more institutionalized mindset as failure, the willingness to fail. And really, it's not even failure, it's a willingness to experiment, gain feedback, revise, try again. When we're in our place of doubt and perfectionism, we really don't do this well. We often want to give up. Oh no, that didn't take off. That wasn't a big success at its first go. And so really trying to encourage, I've been calling it deinstitutionalizing. I'm deinstitutionalizing all people all over the place. It's maybe my new Crone motto. our way of thinking, but just getting out of these more rigid, perfection-oriented ways of thinking and more into expansive, creative. And this is science. This is actually the scientific process, right? This is research, hypothesis, experiment, revision, do it again over and over. That's actually science. This isn't irresponsible whimming or going out on a giant ledge and being irresponsible. It's highly responsible. It's evidence-based if we think about it in this way. So the not knowing, the beginner's mindset, these are assets, not liabilities. In this place, as an open, willing observer, we can gain so much more insight and knowledge and create solutions that are much more effective than if we're coming in trying to impose our expertise on everyone. Instead, we really truly listen so that we can pick just the right little bits of our knowledge to introduce and find others to bring along the ride. So I really enjoyed teaching that to the students. And this is something I've been doing with occupational therapists through the Activate Vitality program for quite a few years, since 2020, I guess. Started kind of building it, exploring it in 2019, but really took off in 2020. And a theme that's emerged over the years is that these OTs built a business for who they used to be. They've built a successful practice, and now at this stage in life, a little way down the road, adding in a few life roles, that successful practice might be running you instead of serving you. And these OTs are coming to me in this phase saying that something has to change, something isn't working. This was the business that served, but now isn't really fitting. Maybe it's really running the show. It's really taking over, the sort of victim of their own success. And not everybody wants to hire a lot of contractors and manage a team. Sometimes the wish is to kind of bring it back to the business that's sustainable, that is joyful, that gives them that freedom and flexibility that they were first seeking, rather than the big job they've created for themselves in the process. And many of them think to switch to that sustainable, meaningful practice that provides enough freedom, flexibility, and income, that maybe that's a failure. Are they giving up on the big thing that they built? Are they giving up on the dream of having the big thing? Because really, if they've got this long waiting list, shouldn't they be serving them all? Shouldn't they be growing their business to serve them all? And maybe that is the solution. But sometimes it takes a little bit of figuring out how and what you actually want in the process, if that is the end result. And that's the stuff I do with them. This is where I'm bringing my experience in working with adults in using acceptance and commitment therapy to really help us get clear on what's most important to us, to really help us identify what is and isn't working, where sometimes the emotions and thoughts are getting in the way, and where we can find that way to the truth and that way that feels more flowy and aligned in the way we're working and how that integrates with our lives. You probably aren't the person today that you were 10 or 15 years ago when you graduated or when you started this business. And that's a great thing. It's a beautiful thing. You're going to keep evolving, and you can keep evolving your business as well to suit you. But it's hard to do on your own. We live in these private practice silos where who do we talk to? Who are our community members on this? And that's what I've created with Activate Vitality. We have a community of these types of expansive thinkers, people with lots of ideas, lots of interests and passions and different ways of working, but trying to find a way to revise and make it really work for them. No surprise, a lot of us have ADHD in there. It's not a requirement, but sometimes it feels a little bit contagious. That means we also have lots of great strategies to share amongst us. Something I've loved about the way I've been able to shift my business over the years is that in shifting from an entirely private practice focused business, like I had up to 2019, 2020, is that now there's enough spaciousness in my week, in my month, in my year, that when interesting opportunities like, hey, Carlyn, do you want to teach a course on something at the university? Or can you collaborate on this? Or I have an idea for that. When those things come up, I can explore, maybe I could actually do that. Maybe there's room for that already. Maybe there's room to experiment with that with you. And then some of us get into the saying yes to all of the things and then losing all the spaciousness that we were trying to build. So we do a lot of discernment and exploration together. For some of the OTs, it's authenticity we're moving toward. For others, it's professional identity. Which professional box do I fit in as I've been trying these different things? Or is it maybe actually who do I help? And what's the most effective way to get to helping them? We have a lot of multi-potentialites within our community, and we tend to have great ideas and many skills. Should I niche down? Should I pick a lane? Should I narrow in? But I really love this too. Make room for that. There is a time to niche down, but sometimes it's having a niche down website for one service and also being able to do the other things. We can work in ways that really embrace our multi-talented and multi-passionate selves without stagnating ourselves, starting to see time in 3 dimensions. So often when we have all these ideas, it feels like we need to do them all now. So I really encourage us to have a place to store those other things. Which ones are we going to focus on in this season? And which ones might bubble on the back burner for a little while and you pick up next season or next year? Or maybe they'll evolve by the time you get to them. But we don't have to do them all now. And that doesn't mean we're saying no to them. It means we're saying just not at this moment. An ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, really helps us with that discernment. Am I saying yes to all of the things from a place of values alignment or from a fear of disappointing others? Am I not making a move on that thing because it's not the time and that feels values aligned, or because I'm afraid I'm going to fail? We use ACT to really help us get into that and overcome the things that might be getting in the way, but get clear on the why. And then we can work on the how. So there's a lot of strategy in this process through Activate Vitality. ACT is the act in Activate Vitality. If you didn't know, it's capitalized for a reason. So we're bringing an ACT to help us with that discernment, to help us with those tools. And that really opens us up to make room for the strategic conversations, the ideating, the solutioning, the planning, the accountability and goal setting. We're doing all of those things, but ACT is coming up as a support for the discernment. So to bring it back to turning 50, I am finding that there's a flavor of freedom, but it doesn't feel like, poof, easy breezy. To me, it feels there's some pain in shedding some of these structures and ways of being because it leaves me open to an uncertainty of what's there in place. And there's also, in creating freedom through discernment, there's a sense of, sort of being done with performing and certainty and productivity and availability for systems that don't really serve. But there's also a feeling of that almost feels like PDA. PDA stands for pathological demand avoidance, kind of a yucky term in the pathological. And I would say what I'm experiencing certainly wouldn't be characterized as pathological, but there is demand avoidance. There's a feeling of, yeah, I don't do stuff I don't feel like anymore. If I don't want to, I don't. But sometimes there's stuff that I don't really feel like doing that needs doing. And so in that push-pull of, do I feel like doing this? Do I want, like, how am I accessing that? I'm resisting productivity, but there's still stuff that needs to get done in order to keep this business going. There's uncertainty and choice and exploration and executive functioning demand. I pointed to the ADHD a little bit earlier. So I lean into naming that. I lean into embracing being a neurodivergent crone. Maybe is that my new podcast name? The Neurodivergent Crone. It could be. Who knows? Maybe that already exists. But the resistant to be consistent, to be visible, to scale, to grow, to niche down. I don't want that. I want some visibility, but in a way that's serving connection, serving to connect, serving to inspire, serving to challenge ways of thinking that maybe aren't serving us. If you see me being a little bit contrary in Facebook discussions, that's my motivation. It's challenging us to think about why we do things in certain ways. What are you noticing as you become who you are in this stage of life? and which things you're shedding and letting go of. I'd love to hear more about that. I see an appetite for meaning and connection, for honest contribution, an appetite for community with other women who get this, and men. Honestly, we've had a few wonderful men in our Activate Vitality program, and men who are going through similar life transitions and explorations, and wanting to find that alignment and attunement as they navigate the ways of working that work for them. Lindsay, one of the OTs who participated in Activate Vitality a few years ago, she talked about truly accepting that we're not meant to walk this journey alone and releasing ourselves from the guilt of not succeeding with OTing ourselves. That was a really powerful phrase. She needed community. She needed connection in order to find her way. I remember when Lindsay first started working with me, she said, I think I need a time management coach. And I gave her one of my Activate Vitality planners. And she said, there are not enough lines in the day for all of the things. Like, could you make a version that has more lines? And I went, oh, and that's something to explore, the not being enough lines. And when I last saw her, she told me that she read her height in books last year. She stacked all the books up and she read her height in books. That is a person who has enough lines in her day. And I loved seeing that. What if stepping into my Crone era means trusting that I've accumulated enough skills, enough wisdom, enough perspective, enough community, that I don't have to hustle to prove it anymore. That sharing here on the podcast or speaking isn't about trying to convince anybody of anything, but rather thought leadership and idea sharing and opening people up to other perspectives. I have a couple of opportunities coming up to share more of these ideas. One of them is that Activate Vitality is currently accepting new members. So if the stuff I've been talking about here is something that you want to embrace as an OT in this phase of life, as a business owner in this phase of life, who's making some transitions and needs some community to sort through how you make adjustments, let's set up a call. We'll chat. I'd love to chat with you. And the other one is a workshop. I'm going to put on a workshop on entrepreneurial thinking. So I'm going to bring in some of the concepts I've been teaching to the university students. I'm going to be bringing this in an expansive way that isn't just about private practice and really thinking like an entrepreneur, innovating, problem solving, deinstitutionalizing. These are things you can do within your jobs, within your roles, product creation, and business, if that's what you would like. So I'm going to put a link to sign up for that in the show notes. I hope to see you in one of those things coming up. If you've been enjoying this podcast, I would appreciate if you would share it with others, share an episode with a friend who might need to hear it, and please rate the podcast on any of the platforms that you tend to watch us. Check us out on YouTube, where you'll see video versions of, I'm going to be posting a lot of older videos as well that never were posted in video form for those who like to see faces and connect, or just have the company of us on the laptop in the room with you as you make supper and things. As always, be brave, OTs.